Hi, I'm Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science Society. Parker Gallant writes an incredible blog where he explores all kinds of energy and climate-related policy issues. He's a former international banker, so he puts two and two together in ways that most people don't. If you haven't seen his blog, you should. And I asked his permission if I could read this recent blog of his on camera, and he said yes. So it might be a little bit boring, but let me give you the story. I'm just going to read it right off of his blog. The Great Reset, Climate Blueprint, ESG, Building Back Better, Green New Deal, Net Zero Emissions, or the Circular Economy. Pick one. As the COVID-19 pandemic closes in on its zenith with the forthcoming vaccines to immunize us, most are hoping that it will allow a return to normal life, but don't count on it. It seems when we read a mainstream media article about the pandemic, they frequently mention the next major upcoming global pandemic is the climate change crisis. If we don't reduce our emissions, the planet will die and mankind will be doomed. The hope, we are told by many, is to choose one of the plans proposed by those NGOs surviving with tax dollars they receive, or the philanthropy of billionaires like the Bloombergs, the Bezos, or the George Soros of the world. It's becoming evident that the influences of billionaires and the cash they hand out to NGOs pushing their agenda is gaining much traction with not only politicians, but financial institutions such as Canada's largest bank, the RBC. The RBC recently launched their Climate Blueprint, 3 pages, and on October 7th, 2020, put out a YouTube video to tell the world they will increase our sourcing of electricity from renewable and non-emitting sources to 100% by 2025. One wonders, will they put up solar panels on their 1,209 branches and install batteries to back it up? Supplying ATMs with renewable energy will also be tricky and expensive, and those additional costs will result in an increase in bank fees. Will Brinks be required to use EV trucks to deliver cash to their branches and ATMs? RBC's 3-page Climate Blueprint includes a message from their CEO, David McKay, promising $100 billion in sustainable financing by 2025. The $100 billion would represent approximately 16% of their total loan portfolio as of October 31st, 2019, and 51% of their wholesale loan portfolio. The blueprint highlights 9 organizations that RBC partners with, which are the UNEP Finance Initiative, the PRI, that's the UN Principles for Responsible Investment, the Green Bond Principles, the TCFD, Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, the CDP, a not-for-profit charity, the CPLC, the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition, Smart Prosperity, the Business Renewable Center, and the Climate Bonds Institute, CBI. It appears the CPLC was created at the COP21 Paris Accord in 2015, and a picture on their website indicates a strong Canadian presence with at least 4 premiers, the Federal Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, and Glenn Murray, then Ontario's Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, in the picture. The Climate Bonds Initiative's, CBI, purpose is summed up as a hugely ambitious agenda to mobilize bond markets for the climate change solutions. The CBI was a UK creation and has a large advisory board from many countries, but only one is from Canada. That individual is Cynthia Williams, the Osler Chair in Business Law, Osgoode Hall Law School for the Canadian Climate Law Initiative. The latter is out of the University of British Columbia and York University. Williams authored in September 2020 and released a report entitled Troubling Incrementalism, which I just happen to have read. Here it is. Is the Canadian Pension Plan Fund doing enough to advance the transition to a low-carbon economy? Williams' report is sprinkled with words we continue to hear from other lawyers such as Stuart Elgee of Smart Prosperity, including Building Back Better, ESG, zero emissions by 2050, circular economy, as well as wind and solar energy. Needless to say, Ms. Williams is critical of the CPP, stating that the CPP investment actions could have the effect of contributing to Canada's failure to meet its international and domestic commitments to a transition to a low-carbon economy. Well, after itemizing some of CPPI's investments of approximately 10 to 12 billion, that's only about 3% of their total assets, made in the oil and gas sector, Williams states in the summary, there is much of concern in this pattern of investments from a climate change perspective. These are all investments in expanding fossil fuel technologies and producing more oil and gas at a time when every scientifically credible analysis shows the world needs to be transitioning away from oil and gas. Well, it seems in the minds of someone with a law degree and operating in the public sector, they're also blessed with talents in both science and economics, but they failed to examine any opposing scientific analysis. As a lawyer, one would assume Williams is mindful in a court of law. There is both the plaintiff and the defendant. Her opinion is judgmental, suggesting we defendants have no scientifically credible analysis. Williams was paid $171,501 by York University in 2019. She presumably has an indexed government pension plan that will reward her nicely when she retires. To top that off, her pension is taxpayer guaranteed in the event that the plan is unable to meet its commitments. Despite her presumably knowing that, she thinks CPP investments, whose maximum payout to millions of Canadians is just $14,110 annually, should only be invested in zero-emission companies in a circular economy. The hypocrisy of those pushing the net zero emissions economy is mind-blowing, and it indicates they truly believe they are the elites of our country. So, yeah, Parker Gallant makes very good points there because, in fact, we know from at least one analysis by a CFA that there are now a number of investment bubbles on the horizon, and they are all in the area of net zero and low carbon emissions. So wind, solar, biofuels, there's a lot of investment bubbles on the horizon, and yet those would be her recommendations for investment for the Canada Pension Plan. So, you know, actually what we probably need more engineers assessing these things, doing due diligence on these plans, more engineers and fewer lawyers, and we need to demand due diligence from these climate activists, whether they're lawyers or whether they're people like Zipporah Berman. We need them to show exactly how their intended net zero society is going to work. And without that proof, they better just sit down and let the adults in the room deal with energy issues. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Sterling, and thanks very much to Parker Gallant for this great article and the permission to read it.